Cool. Oh, press here to go live. All right.
Great.
James, really appreciate you joining me on the Tennis Files podcast, and we're also broadcasting live on Charlie. First off, how's your day going? I know you're in LA and you were shooting some tennis channel stuff. So how's everything going?
Yeah, everything's going good. It's a little crazy hours. I'm still haven't gotten into work yet. I go into work a little later at 8 o'clock at night and go through the middle of the night because we're talking about Shanghai, and to go live, we're doing that kind of in the middle of the night.
Cool. Yeah, my dad actually told me that he heard you commentating on the TFO match a little bit earlier. So pretty sweet.
Watching that, it was quite a bit earlier. It was that was about 2 a.m. that I finished West Coast time. So if he was watching it on the East Coast, he was getting up real early in the morning.
Nice, James. Well, we're here today mainly to talk about your new book, Ways of Grace, Stories of Activism, Adversity, and How Sports Can Bring Us Together. And, first, many congratulations on that. And, the first question I have for you is, did it get any easier, after the first one?
No, well, it was really completely different. And I never thought I would, I didn't know if I'd ever write a second book. The first one happened pretty organically. It was just something I had thought about when I was sick and injured and not sure if I'd play tennis again. So I actually thought about writing, and then it took a back seat when I did come back, when I restarted my career. And then once things started going well, the publisher came to me and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to write and talk about your experiences coming back." So it was all about me and what I'd gone through and what my family went through. And so that was, I don't want to say easy, but it was also cathartic for me to just talk about everything that was going on in my life. And then this one, it felt like almost being back in school, because I was learning so much. I was learning about other athletes and their stories, and which ones we should include, and how we should tell these stories, these uplifting stories, and then just kind of weaving in a little bit of my story. So it was more about all the other athletes and what they were doing to influence change. So for me, it was totally different than just strictly talking about me. I feel like this book, the only parts about that were maybe the foreword and the introduction and the summary, the closing. So other than that, I feel like so much of it was just about other athletes and their journey. So I enjoyed it a lot, and it was just two totally different processes.
That's awesome, James. And I've started reading your book, and I've really been enjoying it. There's so many amazing stories. And I just wanted to ask, first of all, when you wrote that book, what do you want the readers to get from it? If there's one thing you could pick, well, what would you want the readers to get out of reading Ways of Grace?
Well, the one thing I think they should get, and I hope they get, is that athletes are human beings. They're not just the character you see on the screen. They're not actors. They're not anything like that, where they're just playing a role out there, and just all they are and everything about them is just whether they can catch a football, or whether they can shoot a basketball, or whether they can hit a tennis ball. They have concerns. They have families. They have lives, and they have ups and downs the same as everyone else. So there's so many athletes that have been in the news for negative situations, for arrests, or for things they're doing that aren't bringing the positive light to their teams, to themselves. But there's so many others that are doing great things, that off the field, off the court, want to make a difference in a positive way, want to fight for social justice, want to fight for equal rights. And many of them have been in the past and in previous generations. And I talk about sort of a generation where not a lot of people were speaking out. And now I feel like we're back to a situation where there are a lot of athletes that are speaking out. And I think social media has changed that, because it's given people the opportunity to have a direct line with their fans, and for fans to actually have a line to the athletes and really learn more about them. Because in generations past, you had to call a press conference. You had to be doing something exciting on the field to get that press conference, to get that opportunity. Now with with ways to just get out your message, whether it be on Charlie, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on Instagram, you can get it out immediately just to every one of your fans on, at any time. If you have a thought in the middle of the night, you get it out and people will respond.
Yeah, I really agree with that, James. And so, obviously you've spoken to, and written about many of the athletes. And I was actually just curious, what percentage of the athletes that you and political figures in the book were you able to speak with? Did you interview some of them one-on-one?
Yeah, I interviewed a few. I interviewed Chris Kluwe, the punter for former punter, Minnesota Vikings. I interviewed Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova, Meb Keflezighi, the runner from Eritrea, who won the New York City Marathon. So I think I probably did 5 or 6 interviews, but my co-writer as well, Carol Taylor, did a few also, and then others we just talked about, gave kind of my spin on stories that were in the press or that had been going on, like Colin Kaepernick. That's I never got a chance to speak to him directly, but I just went and gave my opinion on all the drama and all the hype surrounding his protest.
And so, obviously in your book, you definitely advocate for athletes to speak out. They have a special platform, because of their status and things like that. But, obviously a lot of them may be afraid to do that because of the repercussions. You speak about an Australian runner who, he basically ruined his career because he, in the 1968 Olympic Games, he wore a patch, to support the other runners. And so what would you say to those athletes who kind of maybe feel apprehensive or afraid? I mean, do you have any sort of messages or words of encouragement to help them become brave?
Yeah, I would say, well, most athletes I feel like are brave to get to the spot they're at in their careers. It takes a lot to put yourself out in the public spotlight. But if you are going to take any sort of a stance, if you're going to protest anything, if you're going to be out there and take on an issue that may be controversial, then just my only advice would be recognize that there may be consequences, and you have to be okay with that. I mean, Colin Kaepernick may have cost himself $20-30 million if he never gets another job in the NFL. But I think he's okay with that, and he's accepted that that's his role, and it's going to help him sleep at night to know that he's done the right thing and he's done it for the right reasons. And I think for any athlete, if you're going to take a stand, you can't take a stand and then half-heartedly back off once you face any sort of pushback, once you face any sort of criticism. You have to know that that's coming. And I talk about that in the book, that I think it is important for athletes to have a voice if they want to. If they want to be educated on a situation or on a topic and go out there and speak about it, they have this platform. And then once they use it, they have to know that there's going to be people against them. And most athletes, I think, are aware of that. You can be the most beloved athlete in the world. If you go into the visiting team's home stadium, you're probably going to hear some boos. You're going to hear people that are negative towards you, and they'll pick away at anything they possibly can to cut you down. And that's the same case with no matter how noble your cause might be. There's going to be people that might try to take that away from you. They might say you're doing it for publicity reasons. They might say anything about you. So you just have to recognize that and be okay with the sacrifices you're making. If the ends justify the means. If you feel like at the end of it, what you're doing is worth taking a little bit more heat, is worth taking some of that drama and adding it to your life, then go ahead and do it. And I don't fault anyone for saying, you know what, that's not where I am in my career. I can't do that. If you feel like it's going to cost you your job and you need that job to pay the bills, to put food on the table of your family, and that's what's going to take priority in your life, then, so be it. I'm not going to criticize anyone for not taking that step, but I just want them to recognize that that is a step that can be taken. And if they do take it, realize that there are sometimes going to be sacrifices.
I really appreciate that very reasonable, approach that you mentioned. And so obviously there's just so many crazy and amazing stories in the book. I mean, I almost feel bad asking this because it's so tough to choose, but when you think about all those, stories in the book, what's one of them that just, strikes you the most as far as like just how much of an amazing person, that individual, was, and or who he is, him or her, and what they've done to advance, everybody else?
Well, for me, actually, probably my favorite and the one that I learned probably the most was actually Billie Jean King. And I've known her probably since I started on tour about 16, 17 years ago. I've known her. But I don't think I'd ever really gotten deep into conversations with her about what she had done and what she went through and what happened in 1973 when she played against Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes, which is now a new movie. I haven't seen it yet, but they just came out with that movie, and hopefully I'll take my daughters to see it one day. But I just think I learned so much more about the fact that I knew she had done so much for the women's rights movements and for Title IX. But when you think about how many fans came into the sport because of that match, that she not only advanced the cause for women, for females, but she also helped tennis in general. And what she did for the sport as a whole means that not only should myself with 2 daughters be thanking her for Title IX and thanking her for giving my daughters an opportunity to compete in sports that maybe they wouldn't have had, but also just for me as a person, I should be thanking her for, as a tennis player, a male tennis player, thanking her for the increase in prize money, the amount of fans that have come to the sport, that have come to appreciate it. Because once you create those fans that play tennis, they're going to love watching tennis. They're going to be patronizing the events and coming to see. And that's why I'm also very proud to know her, and proud that she has the entire facility named after her at Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. I was so amazed that the two biggest stadiums or venues for tennis in America are named after Arthur Ashe and Billie Jean King. And
Sorry, everyone, we kind of got disconnected for a second, but technology, that's how it goes. But James, I wanted to just ask you too, like, obviously you've had so many successful years, on the tour, and, at any point did you experience during your playing days, at least, any sort of, rough treatment or discrimination or anything at any particular tournaments?
Pretty publicized event at the U.S. Open with Leighton. He accused the lines person of giving me preferential treatment because Black. That was early on in my career, and I moved past it and spoke with Leighton immediately after, and we went on, and we had a just fine relationship after that. We played plenty more time, so we were okay. But I mean, I think there were plenty of times that that I was fortunate to have success I had, to have the fans I had, but I also knew going into some arenas that there were fans that maybe didn't approve of me, didn't approve of the fact that I'm mixed, that my father being Black, my mother being white. And I believe when I played my first final in Memphis, there's a very small protest going on outside of it, saying that they weren't giving enough African Americans wild cards, and someone said to the person that there's an African American playing in the finals in there, should be celebrating that. And he quickly shot back that if my mom's white, I don't count. And I felt like that was somewhat short-sighted and a little discriminatory as well, about that it has to be someone that's 100% Black and not mixed doesn't count or anything like that. Or in any way, it didn't seem like it was accomplishing the mission that he was trying to accomplish.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but obviously you persevered. Number 4 in the world is incredible. So another question for you is, obviously, you've written a book kind of about your struggles on the tour, but I just want to kind of present that for everyone today, because we always love hearing about how people persevere through adversity, much like you talk about all the amazing people in the book. And so for you, can you talk about maybe one period, a dark moment, or maybe just a tough time in your career, and then how you were able to rise back up again in order to, keep succeeding in your craft?
Yeah, well, I mean, the darkest time for me was 2004. After my dad passed away, I got extremely sick. I had zoster, which affected shingles, and affected my sight, my hearing, my balance, and paralyzed half of my face. So it was a time when I really thought I may never play again, and the doctor told me that I very possibly wouldn't play again. So that was a time that was really tough for me. And the biggest thing that I did that made it possible for me was take it kind of one day at a time, which I know is a cliche, but I tried to set sort of achievable goals. So one day it was walk to the nearest deli to get myself a sandwich and not get dizzy because of my balance. And then the next day it was try to be outside for 5 minutes, try to be a little bit longer, and then eventually it was getting on the court. And when I first got on the court, I was scared of the ball because I couldn't pick it up. My eyesight was so messed up. I couldn't pick the ball up until it was right on me. So it was okay, just go and be out on the court and hit, just drop fed balls and just try to do that. And then it was okay, the next day, now I'm too tired, I can't do that again, I'm going to try it again in a couple days. And then it was each day like, okay, I can be out there for 10 minutes, I can be out there for 15 minutes. And every time it was setting these achievable goals of like, okay, I'm getting better in my own small way. And I think if I had said at that point in 2004, well, you know what, my goal is next year to be top 20 in the world and get to the quarterfinals of the US Open, it would have been laughable, and it would have seemed so far away when all I could do was hit balls, dropping out of my hand, that I don't know if I would have accomplished it. So I just set that daily goal of like what I can do today to get better. And before I knew it, I was back on tour. I was doing what I wanted to do, and I was improving